Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. My name is Grestar, and for this video, I did something a little different. I've actually had this thought for a long time. I think since I did my Youngster Joey challenge in Pokemon Crystal version, which, if you're interested, you can check the link in the description or the card on screen. So I thought, now that I had time since I'm moving and I'm unable to record videos the way I normally do, why not answer the question, can I beat the game using only a Magikarp? Cheating was obviously not okay, so that was my one real rule in this challenge. I can only use Magikarp. Not Gyarados, and not a team of Magikarp, just the one. Though I did of course have to have a couple Pokemon for HM purposes. Items in and out of battle were fair game, as were Pokemon centers, etc. I figured that it was possible, and a quick Google search my friend made proved that it was, so the question really had to be, can I beat the game using only a Magikarp? This was a personal challenge, and a challenge it was. For this run, I used Visual Boy Advance, a FireRed ROM, and the Universal Pokemon Randomizer. You can find the link to the randomizer in the description, along with the seed and config string I generated. I only used the randomizer to make all 3 starters Magikarp. I changed nothing else. I wanted to go through the entire game with Magikarp, not wait until I had the old rod or the first badge and could buy a Magikarp on Route 4. Even though all 3 starters were said to be Magikarp, and it even said my rival, not Riz, had picked up Magikarp too, he instead ended up with Squirtle. It hadn't at all occurred to me before that point, but I picked the Magikarp in Charmander's usual place. In that regard, I got kinda lucky that I hadn't picked the Squirtle card myself. Going up against the late game Venusaur would have been a nightmare. Given that Magikarp only knows Splash at level 5, I, of course, lost to my rival, then went on to deliver Oak's Parcel and officially begin my journey. In order to start training my Magikarp, Carpe Diem, I went into Viridian Forest and started hunting for Metapod and Kakuna. Magikarp doesn't learn Tackle until level 15, so until that point, I needed to use Struggle to deal damage. To use Struggle, I first needed to exhaust the PP of my only move, Splash. If I had tried to do that against a Caterpie or Weedle, I would have died, but the Metapod and Kakuna in Viridian Forest only know Harden. However, Splash has 40 PP while Harden has 30 PP, so I had to find 2 Metapod or Kakuna in any combination to get rid of my PP for Splash. Once I finally had Struggle, I searched instead for Caterpie. I didn't want to risk getting poisoned by Weedle or paralyzed by Pikachu. I used all the potions I had, including the ones I had purchased with the money I got from selling Oak's Pokeballs, to keep Carpe Diem alive during the Struggle grind. Once Carpe was about to die from Struggle, I'd go back to Viridian City to heal at the Pokemon Center. Unfortunately, that restores the Pokemon's PP entirely too, so I had to find more Metapod and Kakuna. I repeated this process until Carpe Diem learned Tackle. From there, I still had to grind, but it was much less tedious. Still very tedious, just much less so. I tried to fight Brock, but I found that it was ridiculously hard to deal any damage. His Pokemon had high defense, and they were Rock type, meaning that Magikarp, whose only attack was Normal type, dealt half damage as it was. At the suggestion of my younger brother, I went back to finding and fighting Metapod and Kakuna to again exhaust my PP, then fought Brock again using only Struggle. At level 23, I received the Boulder Badge. Throughout the rest of the challenge, when fighting Rock-type, Steel-type, and obviously Ghost-type Pokemon, I used Struggle in order to overcome the type disadvantage. Misty was the next big challenge, and perhaps the biggest challenge of the playthrough. In FireRed and LeafGreen, her Staryu knows Tackle, Harden, Recover, and Water Pulse. Tackle wasn't an issue, but the other 3 moves absolutely were. If I ever got her around half health, she'd use Recover and heal almost to full, if not completely. What would often happen is she'd spend the first few turns using Harden, boosting her defense, and then use Recover to heal. At that point, I'd be back to where I started the fight, except her Pokemon would, take significantly less damage from that point on. Water Pulse was a pain too, considering Staryu received the same type attack bonus when using it, and how often it would confuse Carpe Diem. There isn't much else to say about her Starmie. If I ever got lucky enough to get past Staryu, Starmie would usually kill me with ease using Swift or Water Pulse itself, and if not, had Recovered to heal up as well. In the end, I had to reach level 44 and get lucky critical hits with Flail in order to win and receive the Cascade Badge. Critical hits played a big part in this challenge, both for and against me. There were many times I relied on critical hits, or at least got to breathe a sigh of relief when one happened and ended a fight I was dreading, but there were also many times where the enemy would leave me feeling crushed by getting a critical at the worst of possible times. Lieutenant Surge was next. Given that I was using a Magikarp and Lieutenant Surge as the Electric-type gym leader, I was pretty worried going into it. Thankfully though, he wasn't the hardest gym fight. Not easy necessarily, but not the hardest. In fact, I had only leveled up 4 times since beating Misty. It took multiple attempts, sure, but I learned to use Carpe Diem's high speed to his advantage and regulate his health carefully. If my health was too low, I'd obviously be at a higher risk of dying, but the lower my health, the more powerful Flail is. I found a pattern fairly early on, and able to get my health just low enough to one-shot his Voltorb and Pikachu with Flail, but I got stuck in a rut thinking that I needed a lucky Flail crit to beat Raichu. Instead, I eventually realized that I could heal up, weaken Raichu with Tackle, then, when he inevitably gets me back down to low health, I could finish him off with Flail. At level 48, I received the Thunder Badge. Celadon City was a game changer with its department store, where I was able to buy cheap healing items at the vending machines on the roof and X items on the 5th floor. At this point in the challenge, X items became more or less essential. After stocking up on fresh water, soda pop, lemonade, and some X items, I went to take on Erika. Given her grass-type specialization, she proved quite the challenge. All 3 of her Pokemon know Giga Drain, which easily out-healed any damage I could do, and a critical Giga Drain would one-shot Carpe Diem. In order to win, I had to stall Erika out and make her exhaust her 5 PP of Giga Drain with each Pokemon without any 15 of those attacks getting a crit. After that, it was easy enough. I kept myself paralyzed from Victreebel's Stun Spore to avoid being poisoned by Tangela or put to sleep by Vileplume, and healed up whenever Acid or Constrict got me too low. At level 55, I beat Erika and received the Rainbow Badge. Koga's gym in Fuchsia City was next. Knowing that he specialized in Poison-type Pokemon, I borrowed a tactic from the previous gym, staying paralyzed to avoid being poisoned. To get paralyzed in the first place, I hunted in Viridian Forest until I found a Pikachu, then killed it with Tackle, hoping its static ability would paralyze me. It took longer than I had expected, and later in the playthrough I realized I could have more reliably used the Versus Seeker on one of the trainers just above Vermilion City, as she has a Pikachu with static, but oh well. I started the fight by using Guard Spec, then started pumping myself up with X Defense and X Attacks. Every time Guard Spec ran out, I'd use another one. In this challenge, given that I was only using one Pokemon that relied on staying alive long enough to chip away the enemy's health, moves like Sand Attack and Smokescreen were terrible, as those debuffs would stay with me for the rest of the battle. Guard Spec, thankfully, was a solution to this. Grimer and Muck, however, were particularly terrible because they could use Minimize and Acid Armor, making it so if I happened to hit them, it hardly did anything. Since those moves buffed them instead of debuffing me, Guard Spec did nothing to help with that. Still, I eventually won at level 62, obtaining the Soul Badge. Now, because I'm super awesome and smart, I went to Cinnabar Island before Saffron City. Rather, I went to Saffron, decided the enemies were too powerful and that I probably shouldn't be there yet, so instead I went to Cinnabar where, I guess the high-level enemies seemed more acceptable. Maybe it was a good thing though, considering Blaine uses Fire-type Pokemon, and while he has no moves indicative of this, Carpe Diem is of course Water-type. As I remember it, the biggest issue was dying to critical hits. Blaine's 4th and final Pokemon, Arcanine, had 2 moves that would bring Carpe Diem to nearly half health, Bite and Fire Blast. That meant that a crit would do more than enough damage to kill Carpe in one hit from full health. Given too that he was faster than Carpe Diem, which didn't happen often in this challenge, Bite had the chance to make Carpe flinch, and Fire Blast, as always, could burn him. Ultimately, I just had to keep throwing myself at him until RNG rolled in my favor and Arcanine never crit killed me. So at level 66, I earned the Volcano Badge. After you leave Blaine's gym, Bill goes up to you and basically says, "Hey, I'm gonna visit an island, wanna come with?" Me, being ignorant, thought sure, I could unlock it so I could fly there whenever, then just go back to Saffron City to take on Sabrina. But no, once you reach one island, you have to complete a quest before being able to leave. And this quest was so hard for me. To leave Sevi Islands, you have to take care of a group of thugs on 3 Island, which meant fighting 4 trainers in a row. No healing or saving in between. Worse yet, all 4 trainers had either Grimer or Coughing or their evolutions, or some combination. Smokescreen, Sludge, Minimize, Acid Armor, Screech. So many terrible moves to face. Because I couldn't go back to Celadon, I couldn't buy more X items or healing items, and the only available shop only sold fresh water, which heals 50 hit points each. Basically, I was stuck there for several hours of the playthrough, having to use the Super Rod to grind experience until I could brute force my way through the 4 thugs. There was one more fight afterward against a woman with a Bulbasaur and 2 Ivysaurs. There isn't much to say about that fight except that it was bloody difficult considering Razor Leaf. Sabrina herself wasn't too difficult actually, maybe because I had to grind so much to get off the Sevi Islands before I could challenge her. I approached her with less than half health, used a few X attacks, then essentially swept with Flail. At level 75, I obtained the Marsh Badge with relative ease. Upon fighting the first trainer in Viridian Gym, I was immediately concerned. They hit hard and they had high defense. I went around the region fighting any trainers I had passed over before, then eventually returned, deciding that my money was there to be spent and items to be used. I boosted myself with X items against each of the trainers in the gym, then especially against Giovanni himself. Buffing my defense and attack before instructing Carpe Diem to throw his surprisingly buff fish body against Giovanni's Pokemon again and again until they were knocked out. The Earth Badge was mine at level 80. When I first reached the Elite Four, I believe I was level 85. I tried fighting Lorelei just a couple times, not expecting much success and, unsurprisingly, not finding much either. Instead, I went back to Vermilion to use the Versus Seeker to train, particularly against poor gamer Hugo, until Carpe Diem reached level 88. Then, I used the 12 rare candies I had gathered over the course of the game, leveling up straight to 100. Challenging the Elite Four again, my strategy was much the same as the gym leaders before. Buff up Carpe Diem with X items against the first Pokemon, then tackle and flail till I win. Bruno, with his high defense, took a lot of PP, which was perfect for going up against Agatha afterward, having struggled just in time for her Ghost-type Pokemon. Out of the 4 Elite Four members, I'd actually say that Lance was the easiest for me. My rival, however, I wasn't the smartest when I approached the Elite Four. I really should have purchased more guard spec in particular. Notriz's first Pokemon was his Pidgeot, which has both Sand Attack and Feather Dance, both debuffs I came to loathe, and I had only one guard spec at the time. I used it right away and hoped that he would grow tired of trying to debuff me before it ran out. After Pidgeot came Exeggutor, whose Giga Drain would kill me in one hit. Not even a critical. All I could do was regulate my health against Pidgeot so it would be really low by the time I reached Exeggutor, then hope for a critical flail. If that were to happen, Alakazam came next. Thankfully, at the low health I had, Flail was enough to kill him in one hit, and Carpe Diem was fast enough to go first. Next came Rhydon. Up to this point in the fight, I hadn't used any X defense, wanting to rush through Pidgeot before he could debuff me, and needing to get my health low enough for Flail to be worthwhile. Once Rhydon came out, I healed and started to load up on X defense, healing whenever necessary. I had to keep track of how much damage his critical hits could do, then keep in mind to never let my health fall too low to where a crit would kill me. Once Earthquake was exhausted, however, I could relax more, as Takedown and Rock Tomb weren't as strong. The fight, though, took forever, as my defense was super boosted and his was naturally high, along with my damage being halved due to his rock typing. Notriz ended up using 3 full restores on Rhydon, and we both ended up using Struggle until Rhydon died. Arcanine was sent out next, so I used a max elixir to get my PP back, then healed. Throughout the challenge, some fights came down to whether or not I could survive 2 hits, where I would die on the 3rd one and no sooner, not counting critical hits. If so, I'd have time to heal, get in a hit, and repeat. That's essentially what the Arcanine battle came down to. One of Rhydon's moves was Scary Face, so by the time I was fighting Arcanine, my speed had dropped as low as it could go. I had to keep that in mind with my attacks, using Flail where I would normally use Tackle. If Arcanine went first with a Flamethrower and dropped my health, Flail would be more powerful. In total, I only ever reached Arcanine twice. The first time I did, he got a critical and killed me. I played the second time particularly carefully to avoid that. The first time I ever reached Notriz's Blastoise was also the last. I played it safe and kept myself pretty well topped off on health, chipping away at his health until he fainted. And that's how I became the Pokemon League champion with just a Magikarp. I tried to go to Cerulean Cave afterward to fight Mewtwo, but apparently in FireRed you need the National Dex to do that, and you only get the National Dex if you've caught at least 60 unique Pokemon. Considering I only ever caught 4, and my starting Magikarp, Pidgey, Rattata, and Krabby, it simply wasn't going to happen. Something I didn't realize until a few days after I had finished the challenge was that Magikarp doesn't have to be as physically weak as mine was. Looking at Magikarp's stats on Bulbapedia, its attack can be from 22 to 130. Carpe Diem's attack was 30. Almost the minimum. I'm not super experienced when it comes to looking at stats, so I'll just plop the pictures up on screen. His attack sucked, and his speed was godlike. At least his highest stat wasn't special attack. So, there it is! my journey through FireRed with Carpe Diem. The game says I played for 62 hours, but the footage I recorded says a little over 89 hours. So there's an indication of how many times I had to soft reset while playing through this challenge. It's not really something I'd recommend other people try, as it mostly comes down to grinding and luck, but if you really want to try, go for it. I actually realized too that a sort of easy mode for this challenge would be to use a Phoebus. Their stats are very similar, but Phoebus can actually learn moves through TMs. To wrap it up though, would I do this again? Probably not. Was it worth it? Honestly, probably not. But I am glad that I can now say I beat a Pokemon game using only Magikarp. Carpe Diem, everyone. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.